Hello everyone, and thank you very much for attending our committee meeting today. Welcome to the meeting of the Transport, Regeneration and Climate Policy Committee, the first meeting of the new municipal year. Of course, our meeting today is open to the public and is also being webcast for people to watch at home. There are no items that contain exempt information, so the live stream should be continuous. Now, our meeting today is always webcast, and the recording will be available later for people to view through the council's website. As is customary at these meetings, members of the public have an opportunity to submit petitions. We've received no petitions, but we have received two questions on the remit of this committee. And we've received no agenda-related questions from members of the public for our meeting. We'll go through each of those today later on in our agenda. But before we do so, can I request that mobile phones and other such equipment is switched to silent mode so as not to disturb the conduct of the meeting. It's also important to just very quickly to go through some housekeeping arrangements. There's no fire test planned for today, but if we do have to evacuate, then please do take instructions from Town Hall staff. And the assembly point for those who are attending the meeting in person today is in Tudor Square. Now, I'm going to ask that each member of the committee or those members today who are substituting for other members of the committee to introduce themselves. My name's Councillor Ben Miskell. I'm chair of this committee, and to my left, I'll start with Councillor Riddler.
Good morning, my name is Janet Riddler and I'm the councillor for Stocksbridge and Upper Don.
Good morning, I'm Mike Chaplin. I'm a councillor for Southey Ward.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Ruth Milsom. I'm a councillor in Crooks and Crosspole Ward.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Alexi Dimond, councillor in Gleadless Valley and also deputy chair of this committee.
Good morning, my name's Ruth Mercer, I'm councillor for City Ward.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Richard Shaw. I'm councillor for Beecham Greenhill Ward.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Tim Hogan and I'm councillor for Crooks and Crosspole Ward.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Ian Horner. I'm councillor for Bayton and Liberal Democrat Group spokes on this committee.
Chair.
Yes, Councillor Chaplin.
Councillor Milsom and I should have declared that we're substituting today for other councillors.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Chaplin, and I will therefore move on to apologies for absence. Now, we have received some apologies for absence from Councillor John Wright and Councillor Gamble Pugh, and as Councillor Chaplin rightly points out, Councillor Chaplin is going to be substituting for Councillor Wright, and Councillor Milsom is substituting for Councillor Gamble Pugh, so thank you very much for doing that. I should also acknowledge that we have had some changes to our committee membership, so we'd like to welcome Councillor Tim Hogan from the Lib Dems for joining us on this committee this municipal year. So you're very welcome and we're very pleased to have you on this committee this municipal year. Item 2, but prior to that, I just need to ask, are there any other apologies for absence? No, there are not. Item 2 is an opportunity for us to consider whether there's a need for exclusion of the public and the press. Now, that would only be if we had to cover items on our agenda that contained exempt information. And today's meeting doesn't require or doesn't contain any specific exempt information that would necessitate us to exclude the press or the public. Now, item 3 is an opportunity for members to declare an interest in any item on the agenda today. So can I ask members, if they wish to declare an interest, to state the item of business on the agenda, and ideally if you could state whether it was a pecuniary or a personal interest, and ideally outline the reason for that declaration. So if any colleagues do have any declarations of interest, then please do raise your hand. I don't see any colleagues wishing to make a declaration of interest. Now, item 4 of our meeting today is an opportunity to consider the minutes of our previous meeting. Now, that meeting was held some time ago. Actually, the last one, I think, was on the 30th of April. And also, I think we're asking you to approve the minutes of the meeting that happened quite close to that point, I think on the 26th of March as well. So we had 2 meetings in quite quick succession. Appreciate that that's quite challenging for newer members of the committee and also those colleagues who are substituting today. But are colleagues happy and content to approve those minutes as a true and accurate record of our meeting? Can I see some nods from some people? Yes, thank you, Councillor Horner. Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues. So therefore, we will approve those minutes of our previous meetings for the 26th of March and the 30th of April, which have therefore been approved. So item 5 is an important part of our meeting, and it is public questions and petitions. Now, normally there's a maximum of 30 minutes for this item of business, and as I outlined at the very start of the meeting, we have received 0 petitions, no petitions, but we have received 2 remit questions today, and I will go through those in turn. So we've got 2 remit questions have been received, and the questioners have received a written response which has been circulated to members of this committee and has been published on the council website. Now, we'll just go through those one by one. Our first written question was from Mr. Talbot, and he has received a response to his question about on-street vehicle electric charge points. Our second question was from Mr. Robin Hughes on behalf of the Hallamshire Historic Buildings and also on behalf of the Victorian Society in their South Yorkshire branch. Now, with the permission of the meeting, I propose to ask Amanda to read out Robin's question. And also for me to read out the response to that particular question if members of the committee are minded for that to happen. I see no objections, so therefore we will do that. Amanda, would you be able to read out Robin's question that he kindly submitted to us?
Thank you, Chair. So the question is asked by Robin Hughes on behalf of Hallamshire Historic Buildings and the Victorian Society South Yorkshire branch. The council purchased the Market Tavern for £457,000 in 2006, but subsequent neglect led officers to recommend demolition in late 2023. In January 2024, heritage campaigners were given just hours to commit to obtaining a second expert opinion. They met this deadline, but the building was demolished anyway, breaking the agreement. An untrue story that the building collapsed spontaneously resulted in 2 investigations. Will the council apologise, 1, for the neglect which contributed to the loss of this historic building, 2, for breaking the agreement with heritage campaigners and excluding them from investigations, even though they had direct and relevant knowledge of events, and 3, for publishing a statement which omitted neglect as a root cause, wrongly blamed campaigners' communications, and left key questions unanswered. We believe that the council is sincere in wanting to avoid such losses in the future and to work more collaboratively with heritage stakeholders. 4, what specific steps will the council commit to that will secure these improvements, and will these include a review of existing policies regarding the council's own estate to ensure that they explicitly recognise the value of historic buildings?
Thank you very much, Amanda, for reading out that question from Mr. Hughes. I'll now read out a response which I'll deliver on behalf of the council as well as being chair of this committee. I want to reiterate my sincere apologies on behalf of the council for what happened in this instance, as we've expressed in previous meetings. I want to acknowledge that there were points during the process where communication should have been handled more effectively. In particular, I regret that you weren't more closely involved at key stages of the investigation, and I fully appreciate that the summary shared with you over the summer did not reflect your expectations or concerns. With the benefit of hindsight, it's clear that there were missed opportunities to engage more fully with your perspective, and I understand how frustrating that must have been. I'm more than happy to offer a sincere apology on behalf of the organisation for this, and I truly hope that we can continue building on the constructive relationship that we've developed over the past few months. Moving forward, I've been assured that stronger processes are now in place to help prevent anything like this from happening again. I'm also pleased that we're taking a more proactive approach to reviewing the council's estate to identify buildings at risk. That said, as you know, 14 years of funding cuts have made it extremely challenging for the council to manage buildings in the way that we would have liked. I understand that you recently met with Kate Martin, the Exec Director of City Futures, and Sean McLean, Director of Regeneration and Development, who outlined some of the important changes that are now taking place. In particular, they spoke about the development of a new integrated asset management strategy, which aims to bring together all aspects of property management into a more cohesive and coordinated approach. Crucially, the lessons learned from the Market Tavern will be embedded within this strategy to ensure that heritage considerations are properly reflected in the management of our estates. This includes ensuring that heritage assets are given the due regard when sites and buildings are brought forward as part of future development projects and programmes. I also appreciate the points that you've raised with me previously, that had such measures been in place over the years, long before I took this role, we might have avoided some of the deterioration that occurred at the Market Tavern. I fully acknowledge that, and I'm once again happy to apologise on behalf of the organisation for the situation. Finally, I want to thank you for continuing to work with us on this and other heritage buildings, and for engaging so constructively with both myself as chair of the committee and with Councillor Riddler in her role as heritage champion. And that's because your ongoing commitment and collaboration are genuinely appreciated. So I want to thank you very much, Mr. Hughes, for submitting that question on behalf of wider stakeholders in our heritage community, and I hope that answer meets your approval. That therefore concludes that particular item on our agenda, item 5, which was an opportunity to receive public questions and petitions. We'll therefore move on to item 6, which is an opportunity to receive member questions. Now, we've had one set of questions that has been received, and a written response was sent to the questioner and published on the council's website. That was from Councillor Shaw, and I'd like to ask Councillor Shaw if you'd like to ask a supplementary question, which of course he is entitled to do, and also thank him for asking that question.
Thank you, Chair, for your response to my questions. Can I just first confirm? I mean, I asked a series of questions, so I believe I think there's three supplementary questions that I have.
That's absolutely fine. I haven't had advance notice of those, and you don't have to supply advance notice. But if you read those out now, then we'll see how we can deal with them.
Right. Thank you, Chair. So thank you for your response to my questions regarding the active travel and social justice report by the all-party parliamentary group for cycling and walking. Given your stated support for initiatives to make active travel more accessible and equitable, would you agree that this council, in principle, should not approve or bring forward schemes that go against the recommendations of the report?
Thank you very much, Councillor Shaw. I guess I'm mindful in responding to these sort of questions that it's important that I reflect the views of the whole committee and our cross-party administration. I think it's important also to reflect on the original answer that I gave you, that the development of active travel infrastructure in our city, and by that I mean enabling people to be able to make choices, to walk, to wheel and cycle, is in future going to be guided by our walking, wheeling and cycling investment plan. That sets out a very comprehensive metric of how we will make future investments. Now, it's quite clear that in addition to that, we'll also be dealing with a number of legacy schemes, because the development of schemes of improvements in transport and mobility take many years to come to fruition, which may not always be in line with that metric, but we are moving much more towards that metric. It's also important to state that there's a number of other things that we also have to consider. We've made a commitment as a council to Vision Zero. That is our commitment to eliminate all fatalities and serious injuries on Sheffield's roads, and that has to play a very significant part in our investment choices. So I think in answering your question, it's important to reflect on the fact that our future investment decisions will be guided by that walking, wheeling and cycling investment plan, which again is very much in line with those recommendations as set out by the all-party parliamentary group on active travel and social justice report. So I think those two things are quite complementary.
Thank you. And my second supplementary question is, could you just confirm that there aren't any specific recommendations within the report that you disagree with?
Councillor Shaw, with regards to the specifics of the report, I think that this is probably best taken up in a knowledge briefing where we can go through this in significantly more detail. I think the general thrust of the report and the work of the all-parliamentary group is something that this committee would certainly support. And as an authority, we're working really hard, as you know, and we do appreciate the support that you give through forums like the Walking Forum and the Cycling Forum to push forward on delivering many of these active travel interventions, both the hardware, the physical infrastructure, all those changes to enable people to cross the road safely, to make our streets much more prosperous and people-friendly, but also those software changes, those things that enable people to make behaviour changes. That means working with our schools, working with community organisations, about our school crossing patrols, about that whole suite of measures that we have across this organisation to be able to enable people to make those happy, healthy and safe choices to participate in active travel. I'm not sure there'd be anything necessarily that I disagree with in that report, but of course they may well take a very different slant on it because they're not a local authority. They're a group of members of parliament representing all political parties.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shaw, for your questions. It's very appreciated. Therefore, we'll move on to the next item of our agenda today. And the next item of our agenda today is an opportunity to consider the work programme. So that's item 7. Now, the work programme is contained on pages 39 to 50 of your agenda pack, and Amanda will just very quickly introduce it. I'm also mindful that there is a meeting for members of the committee later on today for members of the committee to input some of their views on the work programme going forward, and of course it is an evolving document, isn't it, Amanda?
Thank you, Chair. Took the words right out of my mouth. I don't have a great deal to add because we are having the work programming sessions shortly. So once those have taken place, then you'll see the work programme develop further with a much more comprehensive outlook for the rest of the municipal year.
Thank you, Amanda. Do colleagues have any questions about the work programme or any points to make? Bear in mind that it is a live document, something that will be added to throughout the municipal year. Are colleagues happy? Are they content with approving it? I can see some nods from colleagues, so therefore we would be happy with approving the work programme as it is on pages 39 to 50 of our agenda pack. That therefore takes us on to the two formal decisions that we are going to be making today. Item 8 is the Redmires Road Southwest Local Area Committee Speed Limit Order. Now it's contained on pages 51 to 88 of your agenda pack, and the presenting officers are going to be Susie and David. Now, before they present, for those people watching at home, members of the committee before this meeting have discussed the report, and as I understand it, there'll be an additional recommendation that'll be proposed from the floor of the committee today that has been, I think, approved as being kind of legally sound effectively by legal and by our officers, and it will be a recommendation that would add to the existing recommendations on page 53, and it will slot in as number 6. And I think that will be to instruct officers to examine and report back to the next meeting of this committee on the potential for and the costs of implementing a consistent 30-mile-an-hour limit, including the stretch between Hallam Grange Road and Worcester Road, subject to the statutory process whilst not delaying the delivery of the scheme's approval today. Now, at some point in the meeting today, colleagues may wish to formally propose that and second it as well for consideration, but I just wanted to make people aware of that, and I think that that amendment was made in the spirit of cross-party cooperation in accordance with our three-party administration. But I'll let Susie and David and John introduce themselves and also tell us about the report.
I'm Susie Pryor, I'm a Senior Transport Planner who's been working on this scheme. This report provides details of the responses received to the consultation for the Redmires Road and Lodge Lane speed limit proposals, including the objections we received. The proposed changes to speed limits are following requests from the public through Forward Ward members and the South West Local Area Committee. The scheme mainly consists of extending the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit on sections of Redmires Road and Lodge Lane. There was a total of 73 responses. There were 11 of these were objections, mainly concerning they considered the current speed limit was adequate and concerns about compliance. There were 54 supportive responses, many of those with some comments, and there was 8 neutral responses. The most common response we received questioned the need for retaining a short 40-mile-an-hour section on Redmires Road between Hallam Grange Road and Worcester Road. This 40-mile-an-hour section remains currently due to the speed data that we gathered before, and we did it twice, showing that average speeds were 37 miles an hour, and without physical traffic calming being introduced, South Yorkshire Police wouldn't support the scheme, as they were concerned about low compliance and currently no funding for measures. This report recommends that the committee considers the objections, approves the making of the speed limit order and the implementation of the scheme as it stands, notes that the respondents to the consultation will be informed of the decision, and commission officers to investigate the feasibility of what would be required on the length of Redmires Road between Hallam Grange Road and Worcester Road for it to be appropriate for a 30-mile-an-hour limit.
Thank you very much, Susie. Are there any other comments that you would like to make, colleagues? No, I'm therefore going to firstly go to Councillor Huggan, and then I'll take any of the colleagues who wish to make a contribution. I can see Councillor Milsom and Councillor Mesereau. Councillor Huggan first.
Thank you, Ben. I can't see number 6 because it's quite appropriate. I mean, I've cycled up Redmires Road a lot of times, and the increase in the speed limit, the decrease for the 30 mile up to Hallam Grange Road is welcome, but then it crests the hill and it goes down after that, and the cars speed, pick up speed quite considerably down there. And I've had some close shaves of cycles, and I've had residents in Ward who have complained about that, and that's the issue, is that suddenly they feel they can just slightly put their foot down, and they do, and because of the bend of the road, and suddenly it's going down the brow of a hill, down towards the next section where it goes back down to 30, it's something that does need to be looked at. itself. Obviously, the national speed limit further down as you get to head up towards Stanage Edge, which obviously is not my ward, but where a lot of my residents go, head that way. The national speed limit, as the road narrows quite considerably down there, is quite problematic for a lot of the walkers down there. So these are things that really need to be looked at, because it is not safe at any level. I mean, one of the things I'd also note is down Lodge Lane. Try doing 60 down there. You're likely to end up down the side of the hill. But it is that stretch that is the concerning stretch, because of particularly cyclists who go up there, increased number of cyclists who are using that road for leisure, because the hill itself is not so desperate that you're not you don't feel you have to be a pro cyclist, but you're going out there and then suddenly you've got cars whipping past you at very narrow things, especially as you come over the Brown Hill. The sight lines are not so brilliant, so it's something that needs to be really looked at.
Thank you very much, Councillor Huggan, and also for your engagement about this particular issue before the meeting. It's appreciated. I'll just take two other contributions and then come to officers for any reflections. But I think Councillor Milsom, you were next.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's very interesting to be substituting on this committee today, because as Councillor Huggins indicated, for us as members in Crooks and Crosspool Ward, this is a very live issue as well. So I hope we're not speaking out of turn on behalf of or alongside our colleagues in Fulwood Ward who have brought this forward. But obviously a lot of residents from our ward also travel up this road, and we're familiar with it ourselves. I think it's odd that although the police do not support 20-mile-an-hour limits in the way that we implement them, so that word of support from the police is key to both of these items on the agenda today, which is quite interesting, I think. So the police do not support 20-mile-an-hour limits as we roll them out in bulk, in that they cannot enforce all over 20-mile-an-hour limits, and we know that they don't, and they've been honest with us that they don't. And yet here we've got a decision that seems to be based on whether the police will support a certain limit at a certain point of the road. Now you've got residents who have responded in quite good numbers, I think, to this consultation, and the vast majority of those are saying make it 30 through, just through. Now if you travel up from Crosspool, as I frequently do myself, you're now going to have 30, 40, 60 as you travel out towards and beyond Lodgemore, and that is just nonsensical to me. So I think, and I'm looking at I guess that it seems odd and contrary that you've ended up with a mishmash design that switches from 30 to 40 to 30 again. I think it makes it less likely that drivers will comply with the 30 at the crucial junction if they're coming out of a 40 and they know they're about to go into another 40. I think that small section of 30 is less likely to get the results it wants, because you're slowing down from 40, you're going to speed up again to 40. I think that actually weakens the design, unfortunately. So I understand where the police's view comes into the decision, and that is part of the decision-making policy, if you go back to 2015, and that policy, which I think has just been reviewed anyway. But I do believe very strongly that the views expressed by the majority of consultation respondents, which is like a collective voice really, everyone said the same thing. I do think that should have overridden that view of the police. Make it all 30.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Milsom. I'll go to Councillor Mesereau.
Thank you. Lower speeds are the foundation of Vision Zero, and that's what we've committed to achieve, and I don't think these proposals go far enough. I think we need a consistent speed across the area and a lower one. I think national speed limit of 40 miles an hour is way too high. Lots of people are walking around here and cycling, and there's no pavement in a lot of places. It passes through a residential area, plus there are 2 pubs and a traveller site. We don't have access to the latest collision data, but we do know that there have been 2 serious injuries in the last couple of years, 1 cyclist, 1 pedestrian. And Redmires Reservoir is a really popular nature area, people trying to get there on foot and by bike. trying to access the outdoor city shouldn't be restricted to only being able to do so if they're driving. But people walking and wheeling and cycling are put at severe risk by drivers travelling at speed. I was up there at the weekend myself to check out the roads, and it was really quite frightening on my bike. I don't think that decisions should be influenced by existing traffic speeds, but by prioritising the need to reduce collision injuries, as well as all the other benefits, like noise reduction, cleaner air, and improvement to social interaction and community. Because that road kind of bisects two residential areas and stops people from connecting with each other. And so it has an effect on people's well-being as well. Just a small thing, could accident be changed to collision, please? It comes up throughout the report, and I think it's really important that we change that, because accident puts across that these things are unpredictable, and we know, and we're trying to work towards making these things making these things more avoidable. So it'd be good to get those taken out of the reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll just turn to officers for any reflections on the points that Councillor Horner, Councillor Milsom and Councillor Mersrow have made. Sorry, Councillor Huggan, my fault, apologies, I misspoke.
I've got it noted as Councillor Huggan, so you're okay. Yeah, so just a few reflections. I think as the report sets out in section 1.2, the proposed changes were on the back of a LAC request, or local area committee request, as Councillor Milsom rightly points out. So the report's been written on the basis of that as the scope. So the LAC had allocated a certain amount of funding to enable the speed change review to be undertaken. So so what we're actually looking at here is a solution which fits within the budget allocation that we're actually working to. I understand, and as you say, what we've reflected in terms of the feedback that's come through from the community about the desire for a 30-mile-an-hour scheme. Again, it's I think the important thing to note here is that a 30-mile-an-hour scheme as sign only, wouldn't meet current national guidance that we have, nor would it link back to support from the police, which we'll touch on in a minute following Councillor Milsom's comment. So again, just in section 2.2, it says the changes being proposed will set speed limits to be more in line with the the local surroundings. So it's how the area look and feels, and how drivers perceive the area. The section that we're talking about is an area where properties just up by the Westminster estate is set a little bit further back from the road. The footpath itself is set a little bit further back from the road as well. But I completely acknowledge what Councillor Mersrow is saying, is that on the section that we're looking at retaining at 40, there are 3 bus stops on that locations where people will still be required to get across that that area. So I think it was just important to just highlight the scope of the scope of the report. I completely understand what you're saying about 60 mile an hour as well. I think we just need to keep reminding ourselves that the speeds are a limit and not necessarily a target. But I take your point. In terms of the police and 20-mile-an-hour schemes, I think the important differential here is that the police will quite often they won't object to 20-mile-an-hour schemes, whereas the concern of having a 30-mile-an-hour sign-only scheme would be that they put my teeth in would be that they may object. So you're right in terms of the 20-mile-an-hour schemes, and we've got one coming forward shortly. The police acknowledge that they have the ability to enforce, but they haven't got the resources to enforce everywhere all of the time, but they won't object to those schemes. As you say, they don't necessarily support, but they won't object to them. As I say, I think that's potentially the difference here. And I think that covered that covered the points between the 3 councillors. I acknowledge that the accident and collision it's come up a couple of times now, so we'll definitely take that away. And I also made a note of your point, Ruth, about the fact that lower speeds are the basis of Vision Zero. I think one of the reasons for the recommendations, and I understand the conversations that have been, that have been had within committee, as referred to earlier, Councillor Miskell, is that I think we're happy to look at something different in that area, but I just don't think we should move forward with a sign-only 30-mile-an-hour scheme in that particular section.
Thank you very much, David. Before I just go to our next round of comments from Councillor, I think, Horner and Shaw, I think Councillor Milsom just had a supplementary to that particular question that she posed.
Is that all right, Chair? Thank you, just because it leads on from your answer, David. Thank you. I think there's a cognitive dissonance between what people perceive and what they desire for an outcome for this, and what the technical decision-making process says, which seems to have to pay regard to police objection. Now, going back to the 20-mile-an-hour zones, we know that they're not going to be enforced, but what we hope is behavioural change, and we're prodding behavioural change by implementing those limits, and they're sign only, and they work. They do bring speeds down. So I wonder whether it is possible here to sidestep the police objection. Councillor Miskell and I and Councillor Horner all sit on the police and crime panel. We have a piece of work to do there in working with the new Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime on the Vision Zero topic. Councillor Miskell's nodding. I know it's all you live and breathe. It's Vision Zero, so respect. But, we have conversations that we can have about this policy and the way that this is approached and the way that Vision Zero needs to be enacted. And to me, there needs to be a change to that approach to make Vision Zero at all viable. We can't be held back from achieving these things by a technicality of decision making, in my view. And I think they are conversations we can positively have and hopefully see some change in the way that it's enacted. So I would say, can't we be brave with this one, and put the public response first in the priority of arguments for a lower limit across the piece. And I just reiterate that you've got two different approaches going on between the 20-mile-an-hour, what we say about behavioural change. People will come down to 20, and even if they don't, at least they're doing 20-something, not 30-something. Well, at this junction, they'll be doing 30-something, not 40-something. It's the same principle to me.
So I will completely listen with interest in terms of what comes out of the conversation with the police and crime commissioner. That sounds like a really interesting piece of work. I think that the one thing that I'd just reflect on in terms of the 20-mile-an-hour schemes is that even where the sign-only 20-mile-an-hour schemes, we still stick within guidance in terms of speed limits. So again, I think the Netherthorpe report will cover that 20-mile-an-hour sign-only schemes are usually automatically considered if the speeds are below 24 miles an hour. If it's between 24 and 27, they will be considered. But anything over 27 will not be included within a sign-only 20-mile-an-hour scheme without some additional interventions. So I understand that in terms of the difference between the police's approach and what the public perception is in terms of what they would like, but I do think we're still being consistent between the approach with the 20-mile-an-hour schemes and the sign-only 20-mile-an-hour schemes and a sign-only scheme in this particular location.
Thank you, John. I think you might have some reflections as well.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, I think the thing I've picked up on this is that the local community would like the whole route to be a 30-mile-an-hour limit because that's more understandable, and we understand that view, and we've agreed that we will go away and come up with a scheme that we hope will let you achieve that, and we will then advertise a traffic regulation order to make that effective, and then the police can either object or not at that point. So we're going to bring you an option which can go forward. What we would say, though, is that just sticking up the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit signs and expecting that to have a difference, make an effect in the lowering speeds, is not backed up by the evidence where that's been tried elsewhere. If you change a speed limit from 40 to 30 just by putting up a sign and hoping people stick to the new limit, it actually only reduces the speed by 1 mile an hour. So doing that and giving people false hope that people will drive at the 30 mile an hour speed limit, I think is wrong. That's why we want to look at measures which we can introduce to make the people actually drive at 30 miles an hour rather than just hope that they will. And that's what we're going to bring back to you next time.
Thank you, John. And of course, for people watching at home, this is probably John's first meeting, I think, isn't it? And he doesn't have a nameplate in front of him, but John is our new interim Assistant Director for City Transport. And thank you very much for joining the team and helping us out with that. I have got some other contributions, I think, from Councillor Shaw and then Councillor Horner, although feel free to go first, Councillor Horner, if you'd like. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. So under section 4.13 of the report, it talks about the speed survey and how that was determined whether or not section B on the scheme would be suitable for a 30 mile an hour scheme or not. Now, that speed survey was conducted on a stretch of road that's where it's currently 40 miles per hour limit for 1.5 miles. It goes from a 30 zone to 1.5 miles at 40 and then becomes national speed limit. Now, in the proposed scheme, you're going from a 30 mile zone to a half-mile section at 40, then a 30, then 40, then 60. Now, drivers are going to behave differently under those circumstances. They'll behave differently going through a very short section at one limit than a longer section. So, how reliable is that speed survey? Because it's going to be under very different conditions. So how can has the shorter half mile at 40 mile an hour limit been modelled in any way?
Can I just also go to Councillor Horner, and then we'll come back for some reflections before going to Councillor Dimond. Councillor Horner.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, kind of summarise what a number of colleagues have said. There's a lot in this about driver behaviour, because the reality is that most people, when they're driving on a road, despite the fact that the highway code says otherwise, often struggle to work out what the speed limit might be on a particular road. And actually creating all these different speed limits adds to that problem. So as has already been indicated, people are driving at 30, then there's a short section at 40. We also know what happens. I think, I forget whether it was yourself, Chair, who said it. Somebody said about it's not a target. That's often said in, I believe, part of the training that people get in speed awareness courses and things like that a speed limit is not a target. If somebody sees a 40 mile an hour limit about to come up, they hit that 40 mile an hour limit at 40 mile an hour, because they start accelerating before they get there. So it's not just that, that it has an effect in that bit, it has an effect before it. Because you think, oh good, now I can get my foot down. And as Councillor Hogan indicated, the particular point of that road as it slopes down, even more so. So I think it's important that we look at this properly. And in terms of whether or not there are other interventions in the future, look, a point I've made in some of the discussions we've had is, one of the problems we get into as a committee is that we design enormous schemes, which often then have problems because we say we want to put in all these bits of street furniture or whatever, and we have a problem with one of them, and then the whole scheme gets delayed, and then the cost goes up. My view is we could put the 30 signs in. I want a costed plan for what interventions might cost, because we don't necessarily have to do all of them at once. We could do them over a period of years. And I think we get ourselves into this mindset sometimes. The only way we can do this is to do something perfect. And we all know the perfect is often the enemy of the good. And so that's why I'm very keen that when we come to what interventions might be needed, we have a costed programme of what they might be. Because we might not be able to afford to do them now, but if we can get the signs in at some point in the future, I also understand that there is a proposal to build on the Greenbelt at Lodgemore Road, which is likely to increase traffic. Now, if that proposal comes off, whether one of the conditions could be, I mean, obviously I objected to that plan anyway, but there we are. If that is going to go ahead, then one of the future conditions of that could be that the developer pays for future speed restrictions on that road. So let's not get carried away with, we can't do this because we have to do expensive interventions. In an ideal world, yes, but we could do this and then look at, in the future, doing bits and pieces, some simple things that start to slow people down, and do it over a period of time. So I don't entirely buy that. I'm perfectly happy to propose the amendment, let's have this sensibly discussed. I understand LACs have limited budgets. I'm speaking as a LAC chair myself, so I can well see that if a LAC suddenly presented with tens of thousands of pounds of road humps or whatever, it's going to find that difficult, if not impossible. But I don't think we should allow ourselves to say we can't do this, because the only way in life we can do something is we either do the perfect or we don't do anything. And I think sometimes there is a middle way. You're surprised to hear me say that, aren't you? But there is sometimes a middle way, and I think that's what we need to do in the future. We know we've got a massive job to do with roads in this city and all of that. And as Councillor Milson rightly said, you and I and Councillor Milson, we have been pursuing the police about enforcing another important part of road safety, dangerous parking. They don't carry out their statutory duty to do that. So I'm less inclined to be concerned about them telling us what we can do in this particular instance. I'm not against that. I understand we should work with the police, and I look forward and try to do that in all things that I do. But in this case, I think we could do this scheme and then come back to it in the future about how we make it a perfect scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Horner and Councillor Shaw. Can I just come back for some reflections from officers, and then I'll go to Councillor Dimond, and I think Councillor Mercer wants to make another contribution.
I'm going to answer your question, Councillor Shaw. We did speed surveys at various locations along Redmires Road before we advertised the speed limit order, which is when originally we were looking at doing 30 on the whole length. Obviously then when we realised the speeds were too high, it was excluded from the scheme. This was done for like a week with, tubes on the road. Following public consultation, when we received all the comments, we also then conducted another survey to see at the same locations to see if there was any difference in the speed and if we could include it in any way. But again, the results came back, and that was done for about a week, that the speeds were still high, the average speed, so then we couldn't include it.
Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. I mean, the point of my question was like that speed survey was on a section of 40 that's a mile and a half long. Now, if you reduce that to only half a mile long, as in the proposals, has the driver behaviour of that been modelled? Because the results of the survey might be completely invalid. People might drive slower because it's a much shorter section of road, and therefore it could potentially be a 30-mile-an-hour section. That was the point I was trying to make.
So it's not been modelled, but it'll be monitored. And I think, as Susie's pointed out, we did a number of speed surveys along the road, and even where the existing 40 is in place, people were still doing appropriate speeds where we feel that we could move forward with a sign-only 30-mile-an-hour scheme. But yes, in terms of that central section, things may change, and as part of our schemes, we'll look to repeat those speed surveys to see the effect on speeds in that 40-mile-an-hour section post the 30-mile-an-hour sections going in. Modelled, no. Monitored, they will be. Shall I just follow on for Councillor Horner's comments? No, it's encouraging that you support the proposals around in terms of the amendment coming forward with the costed programme, which of course we'll do. Just to note, as part of that costed programme, we will have to advertise and pay for a new traffic regulation order associated with making that 40 section 30, because it's not in this case where we've chosen to, we advertised it originally as 30 and we're choosing it to keep it as 40. We didn't. We used the speed data to determine what the advert that we advertised that the report is subject to, the subject of now at that time. So we will have to include it in that costed programme, the cost for advertising, not re-advertising, but advertising 30 mile an hour speed limit along that section.
Thank you very much. I'll just go to Councillor Dimond and then Councillor Councillor Milson.
Thanks very much, David and Susie, for the report. I do appreciate the brief that you were working under when you originally made the report. It's just sort of unfortunate that it didn't come to us before and we could have considered including that 30 mile an hour zone originally. I just wanted to make some sort of more general points reflecting on what everyone has said today, and really to echo the sentiments of all colleagues in the room. I do think that we've all read the comments in the consultation, and it's really clear the support for 30 mile an hour along the whole stretch. And I think everyone has also reflected on the disappointment that South Yorkshire Police don't really seem to be buying into Vision Zero in the same way that we are. And I would ask that we could bring South Yorkshire Police to invite them to meet with us as a committee so we can discuss their approach to Vision Zero, and Simca as well, and road danger more generally, because it is the case that roads in Sheffield and South Yorkshire are just too dangerous. I couldn't help but be moved by one of the comments on one of the responses on page 86, who is actually the widow of a cyclist who was killed on another road, who mentions how her PTSD is triggered by the fast-moving cars on her road, and talks about how difficult it is for pedestrians, including elderly and young children, to cross the road. And I think we really need to listen to residents and also recognise as well. I mean, unfortunately, just last week there was another tragic fatality in Sheffield. Abdallah Al-Yazidi sadly lost his life in Darnell. So this is something that's really a priority for us as a city and as a committee. So I think everyone will share the view that we need to be doing more to address all road danger in the city. So really pleased that the amendment will be presented and that we can look to do more on this road and in the city more widely when we consider our approach to road speeds. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll just go to Councillor Milson in a second, but just to address Councillor Dimond's point there, and I did see other committee members nodding when he made it. I think Councillor Dimond was suggesting that we should ask representatives from South Yorkshire Police to come to one of our meetings, and Councillor Milson has talked about the wonderful cross-party work that's been happening on the police and crime panel with regards to Vision Zero and working with both Simca and YP, but I'm also mindful of the fact that this committee both has a policy formation role, but it also has a role of scrutiny across our city, doesn't it? So I'd be inclined to agree with Councillor Dimond that it would be a good opportunity to invite South Yorkshire Police to come and talk to us about their wider approach to Vision Zero, and perhaps in our discussions about the work programme outside this space later this afternoon, we could look to schedule that and work with colleagues at both Simca and South Yorkshire Police in order to make that happen. I can see colleagues nodding. Let's take that approach and carry it forward. Councillor Milson.
Because just to echo what Councillor Horner had raised about perhaps implementing things in stages, or having a plan that could be implemented in stages with indicative costings up front, so everyone knows what might be expected. And just to add to that, of course we do have our own mobile speed monitoring devices within our local area committees, one per ward, and that, you know, maybe that could be used in the immediate period following implementation of a new limit to monitor quite comprehensively what's actually happening. Councillor Huggan and I could even consider lending our VAS and move it slightly up the road to help. But because it's all the same traffic, you know, it's, people don't stop on the border between Ford and Crossball. So that could help and actually take a more live evaluation view to it as things unfold and see what's happening. And, you know, maybe we strike lucky and people are very sensible about a new limit and take it seriously. Or maybe we find we need more interventions.
Thank you, Councillor Milson. I'll just go back to for some comments from officers, but perhaps I'll just take Councillor Shaw and then we'll go to officers. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. So it's on section 4.9 of the report. It mentions one of the suggestions from the consultation is that the 60 mile an hour sections of road should have their limits reduced, which reminded me of a report back, I think it was either 2011 or 2013. There was a parliamentary report that recommended reducing speed limits on rural roads, you know, particularly, you know, the single lane roads from national speed limit 60 to 40 by default. Now, I know that's outside the scope of this scheme, but I think there's something that would be you know, particularly suitable for a lot of the roads in that part of Sheffield, where you know, there are a lot of like horse riders, cyclists, walkers, and so forth, where, you know, you don't need to drive at 60 mile an hour to get up to the reservoir or whatever. If it's worth going to, it's worth going to at 40. So I just wonder if that's something that this committee or officers could potentially look into in future, whether it is possible, you know, or within this council's gift to, you know, possibly reduce the speed limits on certain rural roads to address, you know, wider concerns about safety and make the outdoor city more accessible and safer for all.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. I'll just go back to officers. Any reflections on the contributions from colleagues?
I've got, I guess, a comment on, you know, based on Councillor Shaw. I appreciate Councillor, you know, Dimond's comments, but I don't think I've got any particular reflections in terms of what, you know, what Councillor Dimond was saying. So I'll start with the positive, and the positive is, as part of the scope of this particular scheme, we are actually, you know, making some of the current 60 up towards the 3 Mary Lads. So that's coming down to 40. But again, it's following similar guidance within the scope of what we've currently got. And again, I think part of the criteria is again around the look and the feel. So the 40 is actually being extended up to the start of the footway. So again, it feels or looks a little bit different on the ground. Again, you know, as a committee, if it's something that you want us to look, you know, to look at. You know, beyond that point, as part of a different project, you know, and having had a different identified, you know, funding source, that's certainly something that we can look at in terms of knowledge briefings and discussions with you to see, to understand the scope of what that piece of work might be. It's clearly just beyond the scope of where we are with this particular report.
Thank you very much, colleagues, and thank you very much to officers for bringing the report today. I think at the start of the meeting and throughout our discussions, there's been a suggestion that there would be an additional recommendation to what is already outlined on page 53. I heard Councillor, can't recall whether it was Councillor Huggan or Councillor Horner say that he was happy to propose it. Was it Councillor Horner? it was Councillor Horner who said he was happy to propose it. Do I see any other colleague who's happy to second it? I can see Councillor Dimond, but I can also see Councillor Milsom and Councillor Chaplin. I think we'd all be happy to do so. Now, I will just turn to Rob at the side of me just to confirm that he would be content with our recommendation and that it's in line with the Council's constitution and our legal commitments and all those sorts of things. Robert.
Yeah, it's clear, and the way it's been proposed and seconded works. I would defer to David, though, for confirmation that it's capable of implementation and within budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. Are you happy to confirm?
So I'm happy to confirm that we can go away and look at that piece of work and bring it back to a future committee in terms of that initial piece of work, in terms of some investigation. What actually then comes out in terms of implementation is a different question.
Thank you, David. And of course, it would be subject to a further decision of this committee anyway, if one was needed. So, for clarity, for those people maybe watching at home, I'll just read it out once more. So, it would add an item 6 onto our recommendations, which are already set out on page 53. And that would be to instruct officers to examine and report back to the next meeting of this committee on the potential for and costs of implementing a consistent 30-mile-an-hour limit, including the stretch between Hallam Grange Road and Worcester Road, subject to this statutory process, whilst not delaying the delivery of the scheme approved today. So we've seen that colleagues are happy to propose and to second that particular recommendation. As I understand it, we firstly take indications from committee as to whether they're content to accept that proposal, and then we would then move into accepting the report, the wider report, if we wanted to. So can I ask colleagues formally whether they're content with accepting that additional recommendation? It would be an additional point 6 to the recommendations. Could I ask colleagues to raise their hand if they are? I can see that colleagues are unanimously in approval for adding that additional recommendation to page 53. So that would therefore fall into the substantive of the item that we're now going to consider. So we've got to consider that the recommendations before us are recommendation 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 on page 53, but also point 6 that we have just agreed that we would add to the recommendations as outlined in the report. So can I ask colleagues whether they're content with approving the Redmires Road Southwest Lack speed limit order, and also that will be with the addition of item 6, which we've agreed we would carry forward. Colleagues are in agreement. Thank you very much. Does anyone wish to dissent? And any abstentions? So therefore that was unanimously carried as well. And thank you, colleagues, for that really thoughtful discussion on that particular item, and also the very thorough work that officers have done to bring it forward, and the advice that our legal colleagues have kindly provided on the amendment as well. So that therefore would move us on to our final item on the agenda today, which, once I get my agenda in front of me again, is on page number 89 to page 114 of your agenda pack. It's item 9, and it's the Netherthorpe 20-mile-an-hour speed limit order consultation report. And I think David is going to present again, supported by John. Thank you so much, David.
No problem. Thank you, Chair. So yes, I am going to present, but I think the first thing I'm going to say is just thank you very much to Lisa Blakemore and the team. So Lisa's written the report that I'm presenting here today. Lisa's been the key contact in terms of the consultation through the traffic regulation order process, and have been working closely with our colleagues in AMI to try to, to get to a scheme that we now currently have in front of us. So, as I say, thanks to Lisa, even though I'm sat here presenting. Just a bit of background, we've got 65 now, sign-only 20-mile-an-hour areas that have been completed within the city, as well as 12 child safety zones, which also have a limit of 20 mile an hour. This does not include the 6 schemes that are currently being progressed. So the scheme that we're looking at here is in Netherthorpe. It's located between the existing Upperthorpe scheme and the city-centred 20-mile-an-hour scheme too. In total, there were nearly 2,000 addresses within the area, and I think as the report includes, there's quite a lot of those addresses, particularly around the Shellsmore tram stop area, are houses of multiple occupation or student properties. Section 4.8 includes details of consultation responses. We only had 5 responses, 3 support and 2 objections. All of the responses are set out in Appendix B, including the detail of the objections, which have tended to be in line or similar to other schemes that we've had, including why you're continuing to annoy residents or that the schemes aren't needed, etc., etc. So Appendix A is the letter sent out, which includes why we're doing the scheme, as well as some frequently asked questions. Again, that letter includes a comment around enforcement, the acknowledgement of the feedback that we've had from South Yorkshire Police. The recommendation then is to approve the scheme, to let objectors know the outcome of this particular meeting, and then continue with the development and implementation of the scheme, subject to there being no road safety issues being identified through the detailed design scheme. And then I'm more than happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, David, for taking us through that. Do I see Councillor Shaw wishing to make a contribution? Councillor Shaw.
It's more of a comment if other colleagues have questions.
Happy to go with the colleagues first for questions. Councillor Milson.
I have questions. It's great. I mean, it's obviously really good to see the 20-mile-an-hour rollouts continuing. I'm just curious. I'm not asking this in a provocative way at all, but I'm curious about 2 things. One is the cost of £59,000 for some 30-mile-an-hour signage in Lodgemore, against £25,151 for a whole 20-mile-an-hour zone, and I'm curious to understand how that kind of costing works out. There's a lot about how spending in the public sector is bemusing to a lot of people, whether you're a punter or a councillor. It's bemusing. So anything you could do to enlighten me on that. And 5 responses to a consultation, whatever that consultation is for, has got to raise alarm bells, hasn't it? And I know you've explained the demographic circumstances and that you just sort of explain away the very low contact rate. But what is the internal policy or protocol for encouraging better engagement in that kind of circumstance? So I guess you can see early on during a consultation period that it's not going great in terms of getting responses back. That flags up quite early on, I guess. So, well, maybe it should flag up early on, so that some adjustments could be made. Maybe even recruiting a local voluntary organisation. So in adult health and social care, which is my usual portfolio, we would engage, say, if we were looking to reach across demographics, we would engage community leaders to reach to communities where English isn't the first language, say, or we might involve MenCap to reach people with learning disabilities. So what happens in this kind of circumstance? And Zest in Upperthorpe is an obvious location to maybe have held drop-ins to facilitate people engaging. A lot of people are in and out of that building, so they might have seen a stall by the door, or there could have been signage up in there encouraging them to take part. So, yeah, what's the usual process?
Oh, I'm okay. Yeah, that's fine. Apologies, I didn't know whether you were taking wider questions. So, in terms of the cost of signing, I'd have to come back to you in terms of the detail, but there are various factors around the cost of signing, and a big one is lighting. So some signs have to be lit, while others don't. All of the costs that we include within our report includes their ongoing maintenance costs, and obviously part of that includes the cost of the electricity for lit signs. So it's not just simply a case of a sign cost X. Unfortunately, so I understand the level of the potential level of bemusement. I can come back to you in terms of the detail, because I can't sit here and tell you, which signs are lit and which signs aren't between the two different schemes. But more than happy to work through something with you, Councillor Milsom, outside of this meeting. But that is quite a big factor. Particularly if there's then a requirement to enable quite a length of feed in order to get power to a sign to enable us to light it. Which is why we quite often try to have signs at or near or on lighting columns, because obviously the power is already there. The low numbers has been picked up at a past couple of 20 mile an hour consultations that we've had now that actually almost ran in parallel. So it's really helpful that you're here and providing a slightly different perspective. But the same question was asked at one of the schemes that covered the area off Owler Lane, Herries Road Junction, so just south of Birth Park. What we are looking at doing is working with a third party provider, again just to try and understand how best, as well as using your experience there, in terms of how best to reach harder to read groups. You mentioned about community leaders. You mentioned about English as a first language as well. So a bit of good news, although we've not been able to implement it on this scheme. It is something that we're looking at. We're looking at schemes moving forward, because it's not the first time where low numbers have been flagged up as the fact that we feel that we ought to do something different in terms of that engagement. Traffic regulation order consultation is genuinely quite interesting. We either hear from people immediately or we hear from people right at the end. So that's maybe a bit of a generalisation. But you're right. We tend to hear from more people, towards the beginning. But it's definitely not. Yeah, it's definitely not linear. I think that the main point that's worth mentioning is the point that we're making about us acknowledging that I think there's some lessons that we need to learn. There's things that we need to be doing differently. Particularly within certain communities, in order to increase the level of engagement.
Thank you very much, David. I've got Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, David, for the report. Notwithstanding Councillor Milsom's comments regarding the low numbers of the responses to consultation, I think this scheme is as it is welcome. I mean, looking at the map with all the different zones around it, essentially does look a bit like a bit of tidying up and gap filling, but it is very important that we still have that public engagement. So I'd be happy to support this scheme today. But hopefully we can get some better levels of engagement in future.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shaw. And for those remarks, I'll just go to, I think it was Councillor Mersrow. Is that correct, Councillor Mersrow?
Yeah, just a very quick point. I noticed in the responses that somebody made a really good point. I know it's going to be outside of the scheme, but maybe something for future. Making the stretch of Netherthorpe Road that's currently 40 miles an hour a lower speed. I'd certainly welcome that speed reduction on the inner ring road, especially with the number of residents living there currently and also due to live there in the next few years. And also, I just wanted to say sorry to read the abusive comments in there. I'm sorry that you have to deal with stuff like that.
Thank you, Councillor Mersrow. I'll just go to Councillor Dimond before going back to David and John for any reflections.
Thanks, Chair. I think Councillor Mesro's made most of the comments I want to make, but yeah, again, thanks to Lisa and David for the report. And I do agree with the respondent about including Infirmary Road, but also we need to, I would argue that we need to consider including the Inner Ring Road and Winter Street, Bolsover Street, for the point that Councillor Mesro made, that we're, the local plan sets out there's going to be 18,000 more people living in the central area, and they need to be able to get about safely. There's one comment that sort of in the report that I did want to sort of challenge. When it said, if it's page 94.8.2, if car ownership in this city centre area is lower, a 20-mile-an-hour scheme would have less impact on residents. I would argue that it has more impact on residents, because the benefits to residents of a 20-mile-an-hour scheme are greater to those residents, because they can get about more safely, they're more likely to be travelling on foot or going to the bus stop or on active travel, and they're less likely to be in danger from motorists. So, actually it's of greater benefit to them. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Dimond. Let's go back for any reflections from officers.
So just really quickly on that final point, I think my perception in terms of reading it is it's had a lesser effect in terms of them as a driver. So they're less affected. But I take the point that you are making, because obviously one of the reasons that we're looking at promoting 20 mile an hour is around reducing speeds, in part, as you say, to make people feel safer walking and cycling around an area. But I think it was the specific reference was they'd be less likely to be affected as a driver, because quite a few of the comments that we get back are around people's responses as a driver as opposed to somebody using the area. You're absolutely right in terms of what I'm going to come back in terms of the response through in terms of the Inner Ring Road. It is outside the scope of this particular report. I did think it was an interesting comment as well, having read the appendix, as I'm sure members are aware of part of the road safety action plan that was approved last year. One of the actions that's come out of that is a review of the 20 mile an hour policy as it stands at the minute. Obviously 20 mile an hour policies do not cover areas such as A road or B roads or distributor roads. Now, I'm not suggesting that you're saying that the Inner Ring Road should be 20 mile an hour zones, but it's certainly something that I will pick up with colleagues in our strategy and policy team, and just highlight that it was a point that you made, that it would be in terms of supporting that particular comment that came through consultation.
Thank you very much, David. I don't see any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution or comment. So David, could you please pass on the committee's thanks to Lisa Blakemore, who I know does a really great job at bringing us all of these reports about 20 mile an hour schemes right across the city. And we know as a committee we're cracking on with delivering that across our city and at pace now, which is really, really positive. Can I therefore see whether members of the committee are content with approving this particular item? The recommendations are outlined on page 91. There's just one recommendation that's outlined before you today. If you are, can I see that colleagues maybe raise their hand? Superb. In fact, I see unanimous support from colleagues across the committee for this particular item, and therefore that item has been carried. Thank you very much, David. Please pass on our thanks to Lisa for bringing this item to us today. And I think in almost record time for TRC as a committee, we have finished our business for today in 1 hour and 21 minutes. But before we finish, Councillor Honor wishes to say something.
Yeah, actually, was that precisely that point, just for the benefit of those either new to the committee or visiting it, this is indeed a record. I know we're going to talk about the work programme this afternoon, but we do again have to get to the point where we have a fair balance in meetings, because some of our future meetings are likely to have significant numbers of items. And look, we take very serious decisions here that affect people. And I know when we've got huge numbers of items on an agenda, we will all get to a point where we're at that beam me up Scotty point of, you know, the human brain can only absorb so much. So I do think we need to try harder to make sure that we balance these meetings and not have occasionally very short ones and then very long ones, and try and get that balance right so that we take our decisions not in a, you know, not when battle fatigue is set in.
And no doubt members of the committee would agree with you, Councillor Horner, as well. And I think the other thing that I'd add to that, I think some of it also hinges on that wonderful piece of work that officers are bringing forward about the scheme of delegation, really. You know, making the right choices about what should come to us and actually what could simply be decided with some discussion outside this place at officer level as well. And I know that other authorities do make different decisions when it comes to their scheme of delegation. And that might allow us to move forward and pay proper or even closer consideration to many items as well. So thank you very much, colleagues. 1 hour, 23 minutes. We'll finish our meeting today. Thank you.